It's goodbye.
Good evening and welcome. This is The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. Hello, I'm Andy Hodges. Now, on Monday, the Ministry of Public Service, Labour and Social Welfare released a statement which read, and I quote, "The Register of Private Voluntary Organisations and Private Voluntary Organisation Board have deregistered 291 organisations that were found to be non-compliant with the provisions of the Private Voluntary Act. It is hereby notified that the listed organisations have been deregistered." So, what exactly is in the Act in Zimbabwe that allows deregistration of PVOs? Under what circumstances can they be deregistered? How exactly is the decision made? Who actually makes the decision? What does non-compliance mean? And can PVOs appeal any such deregistration? Is the Act, as critics contend, a way for the Zimbabwean government to eliminate PVOs that they believe are hostile to them or funding the opposition's agenda? Join me and my guest, Zimbabwe's Minister of Public Service, Labour and Social Welfare, Professor Paul Mavima, as we discuss PVOs. Is government being heavy-handed? Live on The Chase. Welcome back to The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program, live on ZTNPrime from ZTN Studios in Harare, Zimbabwe. This broadcast is brought to you by ZTN in partnership with ZLG. Our discussion, PVOs, is government being heavy-handed? I welcome to The Chase Zimbabwe's Minister of Public Service, Labour and Social Welfare, Professor Paul Mavima. Minister, welcome to The Chase.
Thank you, Andy, and I'm really glad to be here.
It's a pleasure having you, sir.
Yes.
Now, remember, here on The Chase, all views expressed are those of our guests and do not reflect the views of Zimbabwe Newspapers 1980 Limited or indeed ZTNPrime. And to our viewers, we'd like to hear from you. So join our discussion via our Facebook page, Zimpapers TV Network, or via our Twitter handle at ZTNPrime. Your voice is important to us. Minister, let's start with the basics, as I always do, as you know. Can we maybe understand, first of all, briefly from you, what exactly is the Private Voluntary Act? What does it contain? And the reasoning behind this enactment?
The Act, Andy, right from the beginning, let me clear a misunderstanding and a misrepresentation, especially from some cynical people who have been really peddling very, very false information. The assumption is that what has been done by the board, the PVO's board, is based on a new act of PVOs. But that's not true. That new act, that amendment process has not been completed. So a lot of people have said, there is a draconian action by government in line with the new act, and we have started to see the implementation of that act, which is going to constrain civil society space. That's not true. The act has always been there. The act, just like in any other country, provides for the criteria for registration for anyone who wants to operate a private voluntary organization. It sets the requirements in terms of you're supposed to have this management arrangement, a board. You're supposed to provide annual reports to the board. You are supposed to provide audited financial statements. You are also supposed to keep within the mandate that you said you wanted to operate in. You are supposed also to confine yourself to the geographical space that you indicated you were going to operate in. So essentially, you can't say we want to provide welfare for children, and then you end up
doing it for some other group. Or
yes,
some other job.
Or even
something completely
different. So, and this is standard procedure everywhere.
Right.
In the United States, for example, there is a statute called the 501c3 Act, which regulates these organizations.
So there are places, because you said that I think one of the issues, Minister, is that the critics, of course, as you said, or naysayers, they're saying that it appears that normally when we start getting to elections, the government seems to start getting wary of PVOs. And of course, with our harmonized elections coming up in July, they say, you're pushing to use the act as a sign, as you said, that the government's determined to close down operating space for civil society organizations.
You know, and the culprits are always the same, you know. Zimbabwe's resident cynics, those who want to portray that this country is always in a crisis mode. You want to understand, Andy, that this list of the now 391 was originally 450. And this list was published a year ago to say these organizations are not in compliance. And who are these organizations? The majority of them are not even in the political space or human rights space or in a space that would be interpreted to say it is going to affect the outcome of an election. So those who are saying something now are just full of sound and fury, and there is no logic in what they are saying. So it was 450. They were told you are not in compliance.
A year ago.
Right. Some have regularized themselves, hence the reduction to 391.
Okay.
Those who want to understand who these are and what they do, the list is public. They need to go and see. The majority of them, Andy.
But that was my question. What actually were they deregistered for? Because it was a bit murky when you read the press reports.
The reason they are registered is very simple. Administratively, one, the majority of them have not been doing anything since they were registered. Two, they have not complied with the requirement to provide annual reports. Three, they have not given audited financial statements. These are the main reasons that they have not been.
Because I do recall, though, because we did discuss this act, if I remember, last year, and one of the issues that came up, and I'll praise you one of your responses, and we talked about sources of funding. And I remember you saying to me, the government has a right to determine the source of funding and the motivations behind it. Why should we allow funders who do not have our best interests at heart to meddle in the internal affairs of our sovereign nation?
Yes.
I remember you saying that. But in this case, you're saying, though, that this is not the...
But, Andy, there is another element. Any PVO, the world over, PVOs are actually using public money. A lot of people have this shungu in Shona, you know, to provide services, especially to the disadvantaged. So they form PVOs. And the source of funding is usually public. They appeal to you and other citizens. Sometimes they even appeal to government. They also appeal to corporates. Typically, corporates contribute because there are advantages to contributing to PVOs. So everywhere in the world, the government has to know where these public resources that are generated on the guise of helping disadvantaged people are going.
Because that was your argument. Your argument was that if money was coming from, say, for example, the Americans as compared to the Chinese, you'd have to look at the motivations behind why that money...
Yeah, but there's another element that is universal, which says when you use public money to do something, you have to be accountable for it.
Agreed.
When a corporate gives you a donation thinking that you are going to do A, B, and C, it behoves the government to ensure that you are not deceiving the corporates. You are not deceiving the government. I mean, the government, you are also not deceiving the citizens.
The people who gave you the money in the first place to help you carry out your
because
actions.
the money is not yours.
Okay. All right, so, we've dealt with the public side of it, but obviously there is still concerns by the government in terms of funding coming from other nations that may be looking for regime change, in your words, or is there any issue around that?
This is why political fundraising is regulated everywhere in the world. You will not, America, for example, is very strict. You will not run a political party in America on the basis of resources that are coming outside and get away with it. They are very strict about it. No one from outside is supposed to influence what happens in the internal politics of another nation.
But as I said, though, but that isn't what really is this. This is the old PVO law, if I can call it that. The new amended one. And also,
if you look empirically on the organizations that have been deregistered, these are not political organizations. Some of them are community-based organizations. Zakaitwa nevanhu vangava ine shungu dzekuita something, but when they hit the ground, they realize that it's not easy. They don't have the resources. They can't. Some were even thinking that they would make a living out of it. You become an executive director, you raise money, there is a salary for you, but you're also providing a service. But you realize that people are not buying into your mandate. And so the money is not flowing to you. After a while, you abandon the whole mandate. You abandon the whole project.
Still isn't as easy as people may think.
It's not easy.
If I look at the statement, even talking to the board and the registrar, I mean, it appears that the requirements for PVOs is not really onerous. I mean, we're here talking about list of executives or committee members, financial transactions. And of course, some of them, as you said yourself, have either gone defunct or have collapsed anyway.
Yes.
So if I looked at that number, 391 or 291, I think the number I had, how many of those are administrative? How many of those are closed? I mean, maybe you don't have those numbers, but do you have any figures to say of this 291, most of them were strictly administrative? This was nothing to do with...
No, the majority of them anyway.
Okay.
My recollection is that this past year, we deregistered 2 on the basis of mandate creep and on the basis of national security. Only 2.
Only 2, okay.
And the one had said they wanted to provide services to children. They started constructing schools and teaching fundamentalism in those schools. And we said, no, you don't do that. They've been appealing. We have heard the appeal twice, and we have determined that they will not operate. So there's a lot of clarity. Here is another example that has been used. Gyros Jury Association.
Yes, I was going to talk to you about that, because 70 years, I mean, we all know Gyros Jury.
Yes. But people don't realize that Gyros Jury Association was unbundled. It became a number of organizations, one offering education here, another offering other services to disabled people, and different things. Some have complied among those that were unbundled. Others have completely gone defunct. And so they see a name saying Gyros Jury Association.
Because when I saw that, I immediately, because I'm of the age where I remember Gyros Jury.
This is why I'm saying the narrative that has been used is completely wrong. And there is some pseudo-intellectualism that is taking place when people are not even looking for the facts around what is happening with these organizations.
You mentioned something there, which in passing, which I think we need to get back to. This is the issue of appealing, because obviously you may have your ministry or through the board have deregistered this number of PVOs, but there is a process that they can say, hang on, you're wrong.
Yes. In actual fact, a year ago they were told, some came, regularized, they are okay, they are in good standing. Even this list still gives them an opportunity to come and regularize before we gazette.
Even now as we speak?
Even now,
because you haven't gazetted
we
yet.
haven't gazetted.
Okay.
Yeah, but soon we'll be gazetting because we have given them a very long
but once you've gazetted, is that it? Done deal.
They start again if they want to continue.
Okay, I'm with you. Well, you're watching The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. Our discussion, PVOs, is government being heavy-handed? This broadcast is brought to you by ZTN in partnership with ZLG. Minister, in 2018, there were reported over 100,000 PVOs in Zimbabwe, and statistics do show, and I think you can confirm this, that this number does increase around election time. Every election, I think, in fact, it goes up. In 2022, indications show number of NGOs and PVOs in Zimbabwe could be as high as 4,000. But I'm sure you know the number.
No, my officials are telling me that we are sitting at about 2,500.
2,500. Perfect. Thank you.
Of PVOs.
So my question then is percentage. Obviously, then, if we're sitting at 2,500, you've only deregistered 291 or 391. There's not very many, is it? Compared to how many?
Oh yeah. That's another fallacy. It's as if really we have gone draconian, when in actual fact, no, it's not like that. A lot of them are operational. Some of them that are so vocal that whose mandate really is just to demonize the country. We have let them like that. Crisis Coalition for Zimbabwe, Crisis Coalition.
Oh, Zimbabwe.
Yeah, and
you left them alone.
Whose job is basically to say we are in a perpetual crisis situation. We have let them like that.
Okay.
Yeah, we have left. So.
So the narrative you're saying is completely false.
It's completely
So most of the
false.
291 or 391, the number, whatever the number is, the fact is most of those administrators, they haven't complied with the existing act, and that is why their licenses
and people who are genuinely concerned about this, they can approach the registrar, they will be given the list, they can confirm for themselves. Some of them are completely dead. It's almost like in the private sector. Every year, so many private companies are formed, registered. But if you go and look and see how many are operational after a year, you will find that the majority of them are just registered, they remain shelf companies, and nothing happens.
One of the concerns that I picked up, of course, is this move, and I'm glad we're probably speaking to try and clear the air and for us to really ask you the hard questions here on The Chase, is whether it will scare away genuine PVOs who obviously are listening to maybe what you call a false narrative and basically saying, well, we shouldn't really go near Zimbabwe. And of course, that only hurts some of the people that they're supposed to come to help.
No, that will not happen. A lot of the internationally acclaimed PVOs, NGOs, your World Visions,
Transparency International,
Transparency, your CARE International, your Caritases, are operating without any problems in this country. One, because they stick to their mandate. Two, they comply with these administrative requirements. So I don't see why any genuine PVO would really be scared to come to Zimbabwe.
Now, I want to go through what you said about some of the entities, and I'm sure hopefully you've read the press reports, but some of the entities go from Matabeleland, for example, there's Matabeleland Irish Association, Girl Guides Association, Matabeleland Province, Ilanda Woodlands Women's Institute, Bulawayo Muslim Association, Jairus Jiri Memorial Trust, which of course, as you said, may be different from the Jairus Jiri that we all know, Makokoba Welfare and Development Organization, and Senior Citizens Day Club. I mean, you can actually see, I mean, I must be honest, I think I've never heard of some of these PVOs.
Exactly.
So most of these basically are either defunct or they may not be operating or they just basically ignore the warnings. Is that what you're saying?
And remember, PVOs are started by champions who have a genuine concern for things. Sometimes the champion passes away and the organization just dies a natural death.
Because,
so it's a lot of these, you will find that that's the case.
Because one of the issues that came in my mind is, obviously I don't know the full 291, but possibly some of them do have outstanding programs that are running. They have employees. They've got beneficiaries of some of their programs. I mean, that is one element that we forget here, isn't it? By deregistering them, what happens to what's on the ground?
If they are genuinely resourced like that, they have employees, they have programs that are running, those are the ones that will quickly come and
to appeal.
To appeal and to regularize their positions, provide the necessary reports, and then we put them in good standing.
Of the organizations, how many of them have basically agreed with the law? Do you have any, I mean, you may not have the numbers to your fingertips, but how many have come and submitted their certificates?
If we are saying we have 2,500 registered and only 291 are the ones that have been deregistered, it means the bulk of the 2,500 are in good standing. That's what it means.
Okay. You talked earlier about regional precedent and how other countries do. You cited America. Well, let's look at sub-Saharan Africa or the region in particular. What is the kind of relationship that the other Southern African countries have with PVOs and NGOs? Because it has to be a win-win, does it not? A win for the country, a win for the NGO, a win for the people they're helping.
Listen, I have indicated to you the delivery of public service the world over has become the function of a triumvirate of NGOs or PVOs, government, and sometimes even the private sector. And the way the delivery takes place is either PVOs who have resources actually provide services, goods and services to the citizens under government auspices. Here is a good example. When we do food deficit mitigation in this country, we are held by a UN agency called the World Food Program. But World Food Program does not go on the ground itself. It looks for PVOs that it can work with. So government, World Food Program, and an NGO like World Vision work together to deliver that service. The provision has come from World Vision, from WFP. The delivery then is a collaboration between government and World Vision. So that's another example. There is a way also where the government provides funding and then says, you NGO, you are good at providing services for children. Why don't you run this orphanage for us? But we provide the money that goes into it.
Because they have the skills that you made.
You have the skills, you have the expertise, you have the management efficiencies that are requisite. The same goes for government and the private sector. Government actually pulls in the private sector to deliver services. Our roads are now being constructed by the private sector. So
it's a collaboration.
It's a collaboration.
Okay.
It's a collaboration. Okay. And so this is why you always hear government saying most of these services and goods that we have to deliver cannot be done by government alone. We have to be in partnership.
Yeah. You're watching The Chase, of course, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. This broadcast is brought to you by ZTN in partnership with ZLG. Minister, it's unfortunate, but it's a habit of Zimbabweans that eventually we have to link politics somewhere into the whole thing. And I want to just read you a tweet. PVOs and NGOs have over many years played a vital role in complementing the government's efforts and rolling out programs that have a direct impact on citizens' lives. But some are alleging that the government is prioritizing politics over development. As I said, let me read you the tweet. This is from Tandekile Moyo. It says, my latest article, PVO Bill. The silence by Zimbabweans on this issue is tragic and shows a fragmentation between leaders and the greater society. Why is it business as usual in the face of such a potentially damaging blow to civil liberties? Your comment.
These are the pseudo-intellectuals that I was talking about. You know, there is no deep analysis of the superb collaboration that has taken place between government and NGOs, where government has shown concern has been, and which is in the amendment bill, has been in line with international protocols, where we want to, for example, stop the potential of money laundering, the potential for sponsorship of terrorism, but also the potential of our political space being invaded by people who are coming from outside.
We are running out of time, but I just have two final questions for you. My first one is the rumor that I've heard that currently PVOs or new NGOs are not being allowed to register at the moment. There's sort of like a freeze on that. Can you maybe just clarify that?
That's not true, Andy.
It's not true.
The board met in the third quarter of 2022. They are also going to meet this quarter to look at new applications. So that's completely hogwash.
Minister, I have asked you this earlier, but I thought for clarification's sake and just so we can emphasize this, can you confirm that this action that's been taken to deregister the PVOs is not motivated or linked to Zimbabwe's harmonized elections at all? And this is not a way for the government to cut off PVOs who you believe their programs and funding is assisting the opposition or promoting regime change, as the government says. Can you confirm that?
Why would we be concerned about the Makokoa citizens?
Because it isn't PVOs or NGOs that win elections, is it?
No, we are not concerned about that as a second republic. We just want the rule of law to prevail. When you register an organization and you say we are going to comply with these rules, you should comply with those rules.
Well, we have come to the end of The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. You've been watching our discussion. PVOs, is government being heavy-handed? This broadcast is brought to you by ZTN in partnership with ZLG. I'd like to thank my honoured guest, Zimbabwe's Minister of Public Service, Labour and Social Welfare, Professor Paul Mavima. Minister, thank you for appearing on The Chase.
It's always a pleasure, Andy.
Well, that's it for the show. I will see you tomorrow morning, bright and early. Morning Rush, 6 to 8 a.m., the only show you to wake up to. And, of course, The Mint, 2:05 p.m. every weekday. I'm Andy Hodges. Have a good evening, a good night, and please, you all be safe.
Welcome to it. If you're just joining us, are you still tuned into the weekend setup? And you know what happens here? We give you nothing but the hottest stuff.
Tell me more.
Come to the comment section. That is